I'll preface this story by saying that I moved from out of state at the beginning of 8th grade. I'm 19 now, and would ride the school bus with the same group of people from my very large neighborhood for the next 5 years. Most of the kids had either known each other or had been friends their whole life. So throughout the duration of this time, I didn't really talk to anyone on the bus. I would just have my headphones in the whole time. This isn't the most extreme story compared to others on here, but it was deeply unsettling for me. I've moved around a lot, so I thought nothing of having a lot of random people from my new location adding me on Facebook. This guy named Drew started chatting with me for a little while and told me he rode my bus. He seemed pretty normal, and I didn't really think much about it. After that conversation, we never spoke again, online or in person, but I always saw him sitting a few seats away from me on the bus. I even sat by him a few times when there were no empty seats. Fast forward to my junior year of high school. I had started smoking cigarettes and would walk to this park in my neighborhood a few minutes down the street every time I wanted to smoke. I am someone who was always aware of my surroundings, and I never saw anyone around me while I was doing this. But then again, the park was enclosed by a bunch of trees. One day I saw that I had a new message on Instagram that consisted only of a picture of the spot at the park I sat at every time I smoked. No caption or follow-up. I checked the profile to see it was sent by Drew. I was severely creeped out, but was not a confrontational person at all, so I never called him out on it when I saw him. I had nightmares of him stalking me after that. Fast forward again to my senior year. A guy named Sam sat next to me and started talking to me, and we quickly became friends after having ridden together for 5 years and never speaking. We sat together and talked every day after that, and he told me stories about the other guys from the neighborhood. I quietly asked him if he was friends with Drew, and told him that he really creeped me out, and told him about what happened last year. He laughed nervously and said, "Don't even get me started." I kept pushing the subject, asking what he meant by that. He was visibly uncomfortable and told me, "He's been into you since 8th grade. There's a lot to it. I'll have to text it to you." I felt my stomach turn. When I got home, I saw this really long text from Sam explaining how Drew had talked about me a lot to his friends. I had almost forgotten I was friends with him on social media because he never interacted with my posts. But he talked about me as though he knew me. He talked about how hot I was and bragged about how he would always masturbate to pictures of me and see me at the park. I had never seen him at the park. I blocked Drew on Facebook and Instagram and started getting creepy anonymous messages on Tumblr, one of which telling me how he loved to come to my pictures. I gave a smartass response to it and saw it was liked by an account with the same username and photo as his Instagram account. I later talked with Sam about a concert that I was really excited about going to in a couple of weeks. It was a small basement show, so there wasn't a lot of people there. I went with my best friend James, who I had filled in on the Drew situation, and was having a great time jumping around and singing along until I could feel someone staring at me. I turned around and saw Drew standing 20 feet away from me, blank face and stiff as a board, by himself, just staring at me. I moved behind James to get out of his field of vision, but he kept repositioning himself so he could see me. I felt like I was gonna throw up and rushed outside. A while later, I was talking on the bus with Sam, and he told me that Drew had a bunch of pictures of me saved of me on his phone. Some taken for my social media, some he had taken of me sitting or walking at school. I started to get such bad anxiety riding the bus around this guy, and was constantly looking over my shoulder at school, and decided to confide to my principal everything that had happened with Drew. He decided to get the police involved, so I waited for them to show up and take my statement. A few days later, I was pulled aside by an adult to tell me that Drew and his parents had been talked to, and that I shouldn't have to worry about him anymore. Sam told me that Drew was scared shitless and wasn't going to mess with me anymore. So, Drew, let's not meet again. I was 16 at the time, and a total dork. My friends would constantly make fun of me and would always tell me not to waste my money on conventions. But of course I didn't listen, though I really should have. It was my very first time going to a convention, and I hadn't had any friends at the time who were completely into anime or gaming and whatnot. So I just went alone, thinking I'd meet new people and it'll all be fine. Now, I'm absolutely not trying to bash on the anime game-loving community. However, we most likely all know that there are some very strange people that we encounter within it. And it just so happened that I had met one very, very, very strange man that day. Because it was my first time and had already spent quite the amount of money on the ticket, I wasn't really willing to pay too much money on cosplay. I reused an old Pikachu onesie that surprisingly got lots of attention. I say surprisingly because there were tons of cute girls in Pikachu costumes. I didn't understand why I'd been stopped so much to get a picture taken. I remember I got stopped by a boy in an Ash costume, and he asked if he could take a picture with me while his friends would be the one taking the picture. I was having a little too much fun, I think, and had hopped on his back, though I didn't see anything wrong with that, and neither did the Ash cosplayer. However, one of his friends certainly did. He had been standing in the back and was kept to himself, and stared me down the entire time I had been taking a picture with the guy in the Ash costume. He looked angry for some reason, like I had betrayed him or something. I shook it off, however, since I had already known that lots of guys at the convention had been a bit weird and would get upset easily. Maybe he was jealous. After the picture was taken, the guy in the costume, Ben, and his friends, except for the angry one, Andrew, had talked to me and asked me what I was doing and what I had seen. As it was my first time, I hadn't seen anything other than what artists had been selling and random things at random booths. I had absolutely no idea what I had been doing or where I was going or where anything was. So they asked if I'd be okay with them showing me around. They seemed cool, so I said sure, even though Andrew had me a little spooked. I brushed it off and followed them around. Plus, Andrew hadn't been doing anything wrong anyways. We went to a couple of panels and got food and had a really fun time. I met others along the way, though I had stayed with the same group the whole time. Throughout the entire time, I kid you not, the entire time, Andrew had only ever said 3 things, other than small things he said to his friends on the side, and only 2 directly to me. I had tried to talk to him since he had been creeping me out. I thought I'd get him out of his shell or something. I asked him what he liked, why he was there, and he went on about some random anime I'd never heard of. I literally only said, "Oh, cool." And he paused for a while, and then opened his mouth again and said, "You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen." This took me way by surprise. He hadn't said anything of that nature before, or really anything at all, so I felt a bit weird. I thanked him and went back to Ben, feeling a bit awkward. I told Ben about our conversation, but he said it was nothing to worry about, that He was just a bit strange around girls is all. I again shook it off and went about my day. Though I didn't completely ignore Andrew, I definitely had my guard up. This dude was pretty creepy, even though he hadn't done much. Just gave me a super weird vibe. It had gotten very late and almost everyone had left except for Ben's friends, Matthew and Chris. I was supposed to get picked up at 8, but it was already 9:30. Though I guess it's not too relevant, I ended up finding out my father had had a small stroke and was in the hospital. Luckily, he was at a friend's house, so someone was there to care for him. But this meant I had to find another ride home. I was panicking and extremely worried, but I was able to get one from my uncle, though he lived pretty far away. Because I was worried sick about my dad, I started worrying about everything. Matthew and Chris had left 10 minutes or so later, and I was all alone waiting to get picked up. I do deal with anxiety, and being alone in a situation like that absolutely does not help. I was waiting outside because I wanted to be ready the second my uncle got there. I sat down by a random tree, not caring about my surroundings or anything. I didn't realize till about 30 seconds after sitting that I sat straight across from a guy in a Naruto cosplay, mask and everything. I thought it was cool at first till I realized they had been staring directly at me, or it seemed. It was dark, so I couldn't completely tell, but they were definitely facing me, and the fact that I had initially been panicking made me take this not so well. I turned away from them and tried not to look. I would have moved, but I was too scared. I thought that I'd offend them or make them angry if I did, so I stayed put for 5 minutes or so. I made a fake phone call in which I said out loud, 5 minutes? Okay, cool. Hoping they'd think I would be leaving soon. I got up and pretended to be looking for my ride. I turned to see if he was still sitting. Here's where I had a fucking heart attack. He was standing right behind me, pacing back and forth, still looking at me, 4 feet tops away from me. I tried not to panic and thought that I had been getting way too worried over nothing. But just to make sure, I moved around a bit to see if he would follow, and of course he did. I was shaking at this point. I am terrified of being kidnapped or stalked. I mean, truly terrified, constantly having nightmares and panic attacks because of it. And my hyped up emotions were making me completely unstable, so I maybe panicked a bit more than I should have. I tried to call my uncle to see when he'd be there, but he didn't answer. Still panicking, I moved to a random group of people taking pictures. One guy, who seemed to be in the group, was just standing back and smiling while his friends took pictures. I went up to him and faced him to where I knew the creepy guy couldn't read my lips. I quietly told him that the guy had been staring and following, and I had no idea what to do. And I asked him if I could just wait around them for a while. And thankfully, Jake, the random guy behind his group of friends, said he'd tried to help me. It was kind of funny seeing his other friends and girlfriend stare at me in confusion, and his girlfriend looked quite angry actually. Till of course Jake explained and they all decided to help me as well. They did an absolutely amazing job at helping me calm down, and anytime the creeper got close, they'd made some sort of human shield. I cannot express how grateful for them I was. I was a random girl, way younger, terrified, and they were completely supportive and kind, and so helpful. My uncle finally got there at 10:34. I kept checking my phone so I knew exactly when he picked me up. And I thanked them for helping me and told him my ride was there. We said our goodbyes and I walked away. And then I heard my name get called. I turned to see the girls and Jake running over, and one of the other guys blocking the creep who now had no mask on. And of course, it had to be fucking Andrew. I felt like crying at this point. He wasn't in cosplay at all before and had no idea it was him. And I thought he had left hours ago. But apparently, he didn't. I didn't know why he was there, and I was just overall confused and unbelievably scared. My heart was pounding, and the girl who ran after me whispered, "As soon as you walked away, he went running after you." My heart dropped, and I wanted to leave as fast as I could. I thanked them and quickly got in the car. My uncle asked if I was okay, and I said yes as I shook. I looked out the window as he drove away, and I watched Andrew stare at me as we passed him, while the two guys in the group had been standing in front of him trying to talk to him or something. Although I may have panicked a bit more than I should have, I was extremely scared. Why was he still there? Why was he following me? What was he going to do? Maybe I was just getting in way over my head. I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is, Andrew, let's please never meet again. A year or so ago, I found myself, alongside my now fiancé, the victim of the horror stories I love so much. I've been a fan of horror stories since I was a kid, but after the events I'll mention below, it took me a while to enjoy them again. Back in 2015, my boyfriend of 3 years and I broke up. I essentially had mental health issues I was struggling to accept whilst we were together, so we took some time apart. During the few months, I modeled, some bog standard modeling and some of the nude variety. I even had a Tumblr for behind the scenes activities that I'm not proud of that's now gone. I got paid well, so I thought nothing of it until I got contacted by some fans. These fans were creepy to the point that they bombarded me with comments about wanting to have sex with me by force if necessary. This continued for a while until my ex, scared these guys might figure out personal information about me, white-knighted me to defend me from their pursuits. Big mistake. To protect me from their virtual threats and comments that I was brushing off as nothing since, hell, it was Tumblr, he used his personal account. The account that had his real name, my real name, pictures of us, and the city we lived in. He hadn't used it in years, so he didn't remember any of this being on his profile. We never knew it caused the shit it did. But, like the creeps they were, my fans tried to use this information to meet up with me. When I refused, it all took a turn. With messages and Snapchats, alongside spam on other platforms, I just started to ignore them, hoping it'd calm down. My ex received a lot of the usual death threats that ensue with white knighting on Tumblr, and we were both starting to get our lives in better places. Until I got a message that scared me to the bone. The message contained the name of where my ex worked. He hadn't worked there long at this point, maybe a month or so, but he didn't broadcast his job. Only friends and family knew he had it, and apparently, so did my fans. When I tried to make it seem like I knew nothing to prevent any further threats, they responded with, we could just wait around for him until after his shift, before sending me a picture of his work location. Will you meet us now? I pleaded and begged for them to leave him be, scared they'd actually do something, for them to leave him alone. I thought it had worked, but they never responded. After making sure my ex was okay, I tried to calm down for a few days. Then came the next photo message. The bus stop my ex used to get home in the center of our city. I contacted him to find out where he was, and luckily he was on his way home, a few minutes prior to that photo. I assumed they wouldn't know where to go even if they got the bus and decided to leave it at that. I didn't want to scare my ex. I still loved him. I didn't want him endangered because of my stupid, naive actions. He was probably suspicious at that point, but he never said a word to me about it. A day or so later, I received a new photo message. They were on the road near his house. That made me lose it. I texted my ex, got him to lock his doors and windows. He wasn't the only one home. He lived with his family at this point, the people I used to live with, who I lived with for 2 years prior to our breakup. Not knowing at this point how they got the information, we were both honestly scared for our lives. That night, I got an unexpected Skype call from my ex. He explained to me how he had enough, how they told him they'd hack his phone and my laptop to track us down, and how if he didn't end his life, how they'd revealed to my family and friends my private life. He apologized as he started swallowing a bunch of pills before apologizing to me for everything and hanging up. I freaked. No one expects that. I truly believed my ex had gone to kill himself until I received a text from his old phone, a number he hadn't used in years. He told me how he was okay and how he had to fake his death to keep them away. I played along, even to the point of messaging these fans, telling them I was going to the police and how I'd track them down, how they killed my baby's father. I told them I was pregnant, to see if that would get them to calm down, to no avail. They apologized for my loss and appeared to disappear after that. Until the end of last year, my ex and I, after this disaster, got back together, since we both knew living without each other wasn't an option. We got engaged and started looking for places to live, usual adult decisions. One day in October, I got a message on my personal Instagram. We're still watching. Since that point, I've made sure we have been careful about what we post. We've changed devices and got rid of our webcams. To my fans, if you ever see this, let's never meet.